is carbon dioxide reacts with water to form glucose plus oxygen. And it is an endothermic reaction and it requires light. Okay, and it requires light for this to happen. So where do all of these things enter the plant? So the carbon dioxide, can I just hear that people are following? Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me, guys? Is that okay? Is that okay? Hello? Cool, brilliant. So as you can see, the carbon dioxide, we're going to talk about how the carbon dioxide enters the plant through the leaf. Okay, then we're going to talk about how water enters the plant through the roots and makes its way up the xylem. We're then going to talk about how glucose is transported as sucrose around the plant. And we're going to talk about how oxygen is transported out of the leaf. So this here is the equation for photosynthesis. So what we're going to start off with, this is something that you should all of you should know, all right? What we're going to start off with is actually the structure of the leaf. Because by starting off with the structure of the leaf, what we're going to do is we are going to talk about how carbon dioxide enters the leaf and how oxygen exits it, all right? And we're going to talk about the adaptations as well. So let's begin with the structure of the leaf. So this here is the structure of the leaf. It's what we call a cross section, all right? And we need to know these different parts of the leaf, all right? We need to know that part, what that part does. We need to understand why there's a space here, and we need to know what that is and what this gap in the what the pore in the leaf is as well, all right? So we need to know what these things do. So we're going to start off with the top layer here. This is what we call the waxy cuticle. It's the waxy cuticle. And it is what it is. It's made out of wax, all right? Or it can be called the waxy layer, or it can be called the waxy layer. Now, this is really important for the plant because it protects it. Firstly, you don't want, if you're an insect, it's not that nice to actually be chewing on something that's made out of wax. But also, it's transparent to allow light through. So it offers the plant protection, but it is also transparent. This is to let light through. So if you're asked about the adaptations of the leaf, the waxy cuticle is transparent. It is transparent. All right, that is to allow light through. So the waxy cuticle is transparent to allow light through. Now, the next part we're going to look at is these cells here. All right, these cells here are the palisade cells. That form the palisade layer. Now, let's think about the adaptations of the palisade cells. It's really important in biology to think about what we call the structure and then the reason why it's got that structure, so the structure and the function. So let's look at this palisade cell. All right, we're going to look it over here. So the palisade cells are at the top of the leaf, as you can see here, so at the top of the leaf, and they've got many chloroplasts. But why is it important that a palisade cell has got many chloroplasts? Well, chloroplasts are the site of photosynthesis. So if you've got chloroplast A with many, so if you've got palisade cell A with many chloroplasts, and compared to palisade cell B, which cell is going to be better and have a higher, in which cell will there be more photosynthesis taking place at a higher rate? That's going to be palisade cell A. So palisade cells, their adaptation is they have many chloroplasts, many chloroplasts. So in an exam, if you're ever asked about adaptation in the leaf, the palisade cells have got many chloroplasts to increase the rate of photosynthesis. So let's go back. The waxy cuticle is transparent to allow light through. And those are the first two adaptations of the leaf. Those are the first two adaptations of the leaf. So what we're going to look at now is the next bit here, this section. Now, this is a section that a lot of kids out there find not quite confusing, but because the key word is really quite complicated. So it's got a mesophyll layer. This is called the mesophyll layer. The mesophyll layer. All right, and these are, if it's the mesophyll layer, what you've got here are mesophyll cells in the mesophyll layer. Now, can you see here that they're not tightly packed together, right? They're not tightly packed together. There's actually what we call an airspace here. There is an airspace. There is an airspace in the leaf, in the mesophyll layer of the leaf. And this is really important because imagine, I'm going to get another bit of paper, another diagram, just to show you what would happen. Imagine if you had many packed mesophyll cells like this. All right. Imagine many mesophyll cells like that. You've now reduced the airspace. So how are the gases going to diffuse as quickly through to where they need to be? It's going to take a lot longer. So the mesophyll layer has got an airspace, and this is the adaptation of the mesophyll layer. It's got an airspace, which is really important. So gases can diffuse at a higher rate through the mesophyll layer to where they need to go, which is the chloroplasts in the palisade cells. So the airspace, okay, increases the rate of diffusion, allows for an increased rate of diffusion. Okay, so that's the top bit, and then we've got the top bit, which is the waxy cuticle, which is transparent to allow light through. Remember, the structure, the function, palisade cells, many structure, okay, many chloroplasts to increase the rate of photosynthesis. You've got the mesophyll layer, which got an airspace, which allows for an increased rate of diffusion of gases, which we'll come back to later. Next, what we've got here is the guard cells. These here are the guard cells. These are the guard cells, and we're going to talk about the guard cells hopefully before the session ends. All right, so these here are the guard cells. The guard cells control whether or not this part of the leaf opens and closes. This is the stomata, So when you're asked about the adaptations of the leaf, or you might be asked what does a guard cell do, or what controls the opening and closing of the stomata, the guard cells control the opening and closing of the stomata, which is a pore in the leaf. Okay, so that there is currently the main structure. Let's look over here. We're going to look at these later as well. So these represent the xylem and phloem, which we're going to look at later on, the xylem and the phloem. Okay, so the xylem and the phloem. So let's have a quick brief going over of this. So you've got here the waxy cuticle, which is transparent, the palisade cells with many chloroplasts to increase the rate of photosynthesis. You've got the mesophyll layer, okay, the mesophyll layer, which has got an airspace in it, which increases diffusion, so gases can diffuse through the airspace. And then you've got the guard cells, which control the opening and closing of the stomata. Okay, they control the opening and closing of the stomata. So what we're going to do now is we're now going to give you a bit of an activity just to practice using the keywords. Okay, so I'm now going to share my screen over here. I'm now going to share my screen, which is the gap fill task from KayScience. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to complete this task. I only want you to fill in the keywords. Do not write it all out. So I want you now just to fill in the keywords, just so you can practice using the keywords. Okay, we're going to stop there. And these are the answers. Need more time? Yeah, this is paper 1. So these here are the answers. So check your answers. Right, and now what I want you to do, is, can you now do this task here? Can you do this task here? And we can then, I'll give you 5 minutes to do this task. Okay, do you need more time? Okay, do you need more time? All right. Let's now go through the answers. So, write the equation for photosynthesis. That is going to be, let's go forwards. Water plus carbon dioxide forms glucose and oxygen. Why do palisade cells, why do palisades have many chloroplasts? To increase the rate of photosynthesis. Why does a mesophyll layer have an airspace? To increase the rate of diffusion of gases through the mesophyll layer. What is a pore in a leaf called? Stomata. What cells control the opening and closing the pore in the leaf? Question 5. The guard cells. By what process does carbon dioxide enter the leaf? Diffusion. By what process? We haven't gone through that yet, but we are in a minute. Okay, but that's diffusion. By what process does oxygen exit the leaf? That's diffusion. Define diffusion. Movement of gases from a high to low concentration. How do gases travel across the airspace? By diffusion. In which organelle does photosynthesis take place? That's going to be the chloroplasts. And why is the waxy cuticle transparent? That is to allow light to be transmitted through it. Okay, so that there was the structure of the leaf. What we're now going to do is now we're going to talk about the stomata. Okay, we're now going to talk about the stomata. The roots, my bad, the roots. So let's just flip back to this. Okay, so we're now going to look at the roots. All right, we're now going to look at the roots. Before we do, let's just have a quick overview of one more thing, actually. So remember, it is carbon dioxide that enters the leaf, the stomata, and it is oxygen at GCSE that exits the leaf by diffusion. Okay, so that was one thing I needed to clarify. So what we're going to look at now are the roots. All right, the roots are if the roots come up in your exam, it's a really great thing to come up because they're only ever going to really ask about their adaptations mostly. So the roots, let's start the journey of water transport going through the plant. So this here is the soil, and what we've got here is the stem. These are the leaves. All right, we're going to talk about what's in here just a little bit later. And what you've got here are the roots. These here are the roots. Okay. Now, the roots have an adaptation on them, and we call that root hair cells. So they have root hair cells. Root hair cells are found on roots. Now let's think about why there are root hair cells. Okay, so let's think about why there are root hair cells. This is just a representation of root hair cells. I'm only going to draw them on here, just the one. So these here are root hair cells. Now let's think about why there are root hair cells. So what I'm drawing here are two root hair cells, root hair cell A and root hair cell B. Now, root hair cells, they absorb water, okay? And also mineral ions are transported across their membrane and the wall. So as you can see here, water can be transported at any of these points by osmosis, So let's compare how the rate of osmosis, the transport of water from a high to low concentration across a partially permeable membrane in route A compared to route B. Well, of course, as you can see here, root hair cell A, if it's 3D, remember it's 3D, it's not 2D, so this is not just the perimeter, it's going to have a surface area. So this is going to have a higher surface area, so it's going to have a higher surface area, and this one's got a lower surface area. So as you can see here, at each of these points, water can be absorbed by the root, so water can be transported from a high to low concentration across through a partially permeable membrane by osmosis at an increased rate through root hair cell A. So the adaptations of the roots is that they've got a high, the root hair cells give the roots a higher surface area, which increases the rate of osmosis across the root. Okay, and that's from a high to low concentration, okay, through a partially permeable membrane. So in an exam, if you were to answer this question, you would say, the question could be, explain how the root helps the plant absorb substances from the soil, for example. Well, the root hair cell has a higher surface area, give the root a higher surface area, which increases the rate of osmosis, okay, which is the movement of water across the root into the roots from a high to low concentration for a partially permeable membrane. All right, so that is the first adaptation of the root. So the root hair cell has got a large surface area for that reason. We're now going to look at the other adaptation. So roots also absorb mineral ions. Hey, can you hear me? Someone said hello on the group chat. Can you hear me? Okay, I'll continue. I think everyone can hear me. So the roots, as you can see here, the root hair cell, sorry, all right, they also need to transport ions, but ions are transported from a low to high concentration. The high concentration of mineral ions are in the root. So these mineral ions need to be transported from a low concentration to where there is a high concentration, because mineral ions exist in a lower concentration in the soil. So how does the plant, the root, transport mineral ions from a low to high concentration? Well, that's going to be via active transport. So mineral ions are actively transported from a low to high concentration. Don't confuse that with diffusion or osmosis, because remember, osmosis is the movement of water from the soil where there is a high concentration to the water, so it's into the root where there is a lower concentration of water. Active transport transports mineral ions from a low to high concentration. And it does that, and it requires energy. So there are protein carrier molecules in the membrane of the root hair cell, and they transport mineral ions from a low concentration to a high concentration, and it requires energy. All right, so it requires energy for that. So what we're going to do now is do a quickly put the task on the board. Would you rather me, actually, I want some feedback. Would you rather me just continue teaching, or would you rather me do lots of the gap fill stuff and the questions? I think it's really important that we do the questions personally, so you can practice doing it. Okay, that's my opinion. If you write in the chat what you think, that would be interesting just to hear. All right, so let's go through that one more time. So active transport, remember, is active transport Yeah, I agree, Alina. So remember, so active transport, let's go through that again on a clean bit of paper. One more time. Active transport is the movement of, in this case, mineral ions from a low to high concentration. It requires energy, and the ions move through a protein carrier molecule. So what you're going to do now is I want everybody to spend a few minutes just doing this task here. Okay, can everybody now attempt this task here? So you're only filling in the keywords. Practice using the keywords. You're not writing it out. You've got 1 minute. Okay, we're now going to go through the answers. Okay, we're now going to go through to the questions. Right, let's now go through the answers. So those are the answers. Right, what we're now going to do is we're now going to look at the xylem and the phloem. So we're now going to look at the xylem and the phloem. All right, we're now going to look at the xylem and the phloem. So what we've got here is the soil. Okay, what we've got here is the soil, and this here is the roots. We've just said that the roots absorb water. The roots absorb water. All right, the roots absorb water. So how does the water get from the roots to the leaves? How do the roots, sorry, how did the water get from the roots to the leaves? That process is called transpiration. 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 Whereby water that is absorbed into the root by osmosis from a high to low concentration, that water then moves through something called the xylem, which we're going to draw now. So we're now going to draw the xylem and explain the adaptations of the xylem. So the xylem have no end cell walls. So as you can see here, they've got no end cell walls. No end cell walls. And they're dead cells. So I'm going to explain why they have these adaptations. So as you can see here, they've got no end cell walls here. There's a gap. Okay, there's a gap. If there were end cell walls going across there, that would mean that the water cannot be transported through the xylem, cannot be transported through the xylem by the process of transpiration, whereby water moves from the roots to the leaves. Okay, from the roots to the leaves. So what are the adaptations one more time? So they've got no end cell walls. They've got no end cell walls. This is to increase the rate of transpiration. Because if there were end cell walls there, the water would stop at this point here. The water would stop at this point here. But there aren't any end cell walls. So there are no end cell walls. Next, they are dead cells. Dead cells, and they are hollow with no cytoplasm. With no cytoplasm. All right, with no cytoplasm. Let's think about what cytoplasm would do. So what I'm going to draw here is another xylem which has got all the adaptations, which has got none of the adaptations that we've described. So this one has got end cell walls, as you can see here. This one has got no end cell walls. So this is what is a bad xylem, a poorly adapted xylem would look like, right? So imagine if there was cytoplasm in the xylem. Imagine for 1 second, what's going to happen to how the water moves through the xylem? It's going to be transported much more slowly, much more slowly. So that means there is, but in a xylem, there is no cytoplasm. So there is no cytoplasm in a xylem. This is to increase the rate of transpiration. And they're hollow, hollow. There's nothing in them. They're like tubes. Imagine if you're trying to drink Coca-Cola at McDonald's and someone puts paper into the straw. You're not going to be able to drink it as well because it's no longer completely hollow. So because it's hollow, water can be transported through the xylem. So remember, no cytoplasm, which increases the rate of transpiration. The xylem is hollow to increase the rate of transpiration. To increase the rate of transpiration, they're dead cells. And they've got no end cell walls. Look here. This would block any water moving through the plant. All right, it would block, so the water couldn't get to the leaves. So transpiration is the movement of water from the roots to the leaves. And the water, when it gets to the leaves, it's going to turn into a gas, into a water vapor. And it's going to then evaporate out of the stomata. Okay, so the water is going to then evaporate, when it gets to the leaf, it's going to evaporate and diffuse out of the stomata. So that there is transpiration. And there's one more thing we need to quickly think about with transpiration, and that is lignin. Lignin strengthens the xylem. So lignin is a molecule that strengthens the xylem. Okay, it's got lignin. So in an exam, there was actually a 6-mark question on this not that long, it's a couple of years ago. It was Edexcel, but it was to compare the it didn't have, you have to compare them, right? The xylem and the phloem, we're going to talk about in a minute. So Alina, as you can see here, there's the guard cells are here, and this is the stomata. So the water is going to then evaporate out of the stomata, and then more water is going to follow on behind it. All right. So we're going to talk about transpiration maybe in another time. All right. So let's go through that one more time, only because you can be asked to, what do you call it, compare the xylem and the phloem maybe, or just for 4 marks, describe the xylem. So the xylem is where water is transported from the roots to the leaves. In an Edexcel exam, that would have been 1 mark. The xylem is where transpiration takes place, and it's in one direction. So transpiration takes place in one direction. So adaptations are the dead cells, they are hollow, and they've got no cytoplasm. All right. So remember, no cytoplasm to allow the water to be transported through. We're now going to look at the phloem. We're now going to look at the phloem. Okay, so the phloem is a bit different. The phloem is a bit different. So there's this, sometimes people think, oh, the xylem and the phloem are really complicated. And I think they are in terms of the key word to remember. But in terms of what they do, I don't think they are that difficult. So we're now going to think about this. So this is the xylem here. I'm going to draw the xylem next to the phloem. All right, because they're not in 2 different plants. If I did that, you might get confused. So this here is the xylem. And now what we're going to do is look at the phloem. We're now going to look at the phloem. So the phloem is here. The phloem is slightly different. So the phloem is made of sieve cells. Sieve cells, as you can see here, sieve cells or sieve tube elements. Okay. Now, the point of the phloem is that sucrose or sugars are transported through them. So this is the leaf, the xylem, this is the sieve tubes of the phloem, and next to the sieve tubes you've got companion cells. You've got companion cells. Okay, companion cells. Anyone doing Edexcel should watch my video online on the phloem video, which is specific for Edexcel. This doesn't go into as much detail as Edexcel needs. So this here is the phloem. The phloem consists of sieve cells and companion cells. Sieve cells and companion cells. These here are called the sieve plates. Imagine, like in your houses or whatever, you've got sieves or colanders with holes in them. They allow things through. So the phloem transports sucrose. It transports sucrose around the plant. So sucrose can be transported through the sieve cells. And the sieve plates here have got pores in them to allow the sucrose to be transported. Okay, it allows the sucrose to be transported. So sucrose can be transported through the phloem. Sugars, called sucrose, can be transported through the phloem. Now let's think about the phloem and the companion cells in a little bit more detail. So the companion cells are living. The companion cells are living, and the sieve tubes have got a little bit of cytoplasm, tiny bit, but there's still space here for the sucrose to move, to be transported through the plant. So the sucrose can be transported in two directions, through the phloem. And this process is called translocation. Translocation. So we've got translocation, which is the movement of the sugar sucrose through the phloem in two directions. So it can go down the plant or it can go up the plant. And so let's go through that one more time. This is really complicated. So you've got the phloem, which consists of companion cells and sieve cells. These here are the sieve plates. They've got pores in them to allow sucrose and sugars to move through the phloem in two directions. And this process is translocation. A few years ago, I marked a mock paper where you had to compare the phloem and the xylem, or transpiration, and translocation. One of the pupils spoke perfectly about both, but instead of calling transpiration, they called it translocation. They called translocation transpiration, and the marks he said I could give them no marks. It is so important that when you talk about this, you talk about translocation happening in the phloem and transpiration happening in the xylem. This is one of the biggest things that kids do, is just write translocation, then move on about thinking. They both begin with the same 5 letters. All right, they both begin with the same 5 letters. So what we're going to do now is we're now going to I want you to now do the gap fill very quickly. In fact, we don't have time for that. What I want you guys to do now is attempt these questions here. So I'm going to put these questions up, not the answers, which are currently going to be up in a second. Okay, cool. So the questions are, so I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so now you should all be able to see the questions. Israel and Victoria, I don't know about doing just triple students, but you can always just sign up to the website and have a look at them, or just use our videos. Israel, this is for combined and triple and higher end foundation. Right. So let's go through the answers, because then you guys can get away. I know you're eager to go and watch Great British Bake Off like I am. Can you hear me, just so I know? Can you hear me? Right, so here are the answers. So let's go through the answers, okay? Transpiration takes place. So question 1, the answer is the xylem. Translocation takes place in the phloem. Water is transported in the xylem. Sugar, sucrose, is transported in the phloem. The xylem transports water. The phloem transports sucrose, so sugar. The xylem is adapted. It's hollow. It's got no cytoplasm, and it's got dead cells and no end cell walls. This to increase rate of transpiration. The phloem has got sieve plates in the sieve tubes. This is to allow the movement of sucrose to the plant. It's got very little cytoplasm to increase the rate of translocation. Water is transported in one direction, sugar in two. Water is transported to and from from the roots to the leaves. So that there, guys, was the first KayScience online tuition. I put the wrong link. I've accidentally created a new link, so that was my fault. Apparently, there's a lot of kids waiting, and they didn't know where the link was, so that was my fault. So well done for turning up today. Many kids didn't, because I'm a bit of an idiot, really. So, right, that was that. If you want to use our website, please go ahead. I think it'll really help you in your exams, to be quite honest. So yeah, have a lovely evening. Any questions? I'll stay around for a few minutes after, just in the chat. Yeah, great. Israel, these are every Tuesday and Thursday. It's okay, Alina. Did it help you, Alina? Thanks, Israel. Appreciate that. Tell all your friends, and we're going to put a proper link on next time. So a lot of kids were, yeah, confused about where to go. It's all right, whatever that person's name is. All right, Javel, United are rubbish. They go. Hopefully they get beaten today. Go to KayScience.com, and you'll have access to all our videos. Yeah. All right. Have a lovely yeah, 6:30. I'm gonna put a proper link on next time. Subscribe, and you'll get updates. Tell your friends to subscribe, and you'll get updates. Israel's a City fan. Cool story. Yeah. Ali, what are the best revision techniques? Honestly, self-testing. I think self-testing yourself. If you've got a revision guide, Ali, I would 100% get your information, self-quizzing it. So write the questions out and then self-quiz, maybe using flashcards. So write a bit of information on one side, which is a question, and the answer on the other, and just consistently question, answer yourself. Yeah, that's good, Ali, that you do that. Self-quizzing is brilliant. Listen, it was lovely to have you all here. I'm going to go to watch, hopefully, Man United get beaten. We can all dream. Right, have a lovely evening, guys. Bye.